morning or good evening, depending on where you are in the globe. How are you guys? Can you come on in and please tell us where you're watching from in the comments below? Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so as people come in, let me just introduce myself. My name is Liana Freeman. I'm a political correspondent and comedian here with Ebony Expats News. We are here to keep you updated, informed, and empowered through a global network of Black travelers and expats. How are you guys doing? Okay, I see some people coming in. Okay, it is 10:06 a.m. here in Bangkok. So I'm interested in what time it is there by you guys. Okay, okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay. It's great to see you guys, or maybe it's great that I don't see you guys because I know for a fact that 50% of you guys are naked and the other 50% is missing a top or a bottom, but that's okay. Come in as you are and let's go through this episode together. Alrighty. So it's still the number one headline in the world, just like it was last week. COVID-19, formerly known as the 2020 Ender and Vision Board Blocker, has only become more dynamic in the last week. I just can't help but to think that in the beginning there were only a few avenues of conversation surrounding COVID-19, but now it's kind of morphed into like the world's most popular reality TV show as we learn who's got COVID-19, where'd they get it from, how are they dealing with it, and then on a wider scale, how our government's dealing with it and handling it. So wherever there's an inquiry, there's someone scrambling to develop an answer, and then all of this conversation being generated. The only question that I think there's that is the only question that there is left to ask and that we don't have answers for is why the hell are people still gathering in masses? That's but putting that aside, let's get into it. So in this episode, we're going to bring you updates for travelers and expats. Then we're going to go over some hard-hitting news from around the globe, and lastly, we'll talk about the impacts on mental health and the importance of routine during the social distancing quarantine time. Okay, so travel updates. If you're watching this, you may be in your home country or you may be abroad. We are in Bangkok, as we said, but we definitely have viewers from all over the world with a myriad of experience. One thing that we all are affected by, however, is the fact that international borders are still closed and we still have no idea when they're opening back up, which is more than unprecedented. It's daunting, right? Especially if you're in a place that you weren't anticipating being, or you had some plans to depart within the last couple of months, or if you had travel plans leaving your country in the last couple of months. We're all affected by the fact that people are no longer able to move across borders with as much agency as they were last time, which is, of course, creating a really big problem. Last episode, we talked about the number of people stranded abroad. And this week, we've had a lot of governments telling their citizens abroad, hey, this is your last chance to come home. Or unless you plan on being in this country for an extended period of time, try your best to find a chartered flight home. For many of us, that wasn't feasible or desirable, or we outright weren't able to find a flight. The problem isn't so much citizens of a country returning back home as much as it is trying to find a flight between where you are now and where you'd like to be, which of course is frustrating, but that's the reality that we're in. um yeah, so that's kind of making a precarious situation for some of us. Like we said, just because we don't know when those borders are going to open up. So on the Thailand side of it, there are certainly people who have left the country, not been able to get back in, and just getting home. So let's go ahead and dive into some news from around the world. The level of newsworthy stories produced this week range from wildly entertaining to just plain sinister. So let's get right into it. Pop cultural phenomenon and Netflix icon, the Tiger King has been sent into isolation amid fears of exposure to coronavirus. So, I'm very sad about this. But the only people who seem to be celebrating this news are homophobes and, of course, Carol Baskin. All I have to say is before seeing the series, I had no idea that you could buy a whole ass tiger for 2,000 USD. Their Balenciaga shoes more expensive than 2,000 USD. It's absolutely crazy, and that's something that I definitely won't forget. In other news, South Africa and Taiwan impressed the entire world with their efficient response to coronavirus. And this pairing is so rare, it's about as common as a Trump supporter articulating themselves in Spanish. Barack Obama is still nowhere to be found, and we lost a musical legend, Bill Withers, driving home the point that we may not have anyone to lean on in this period of time. Countries like Thailand and Germany have barred people from sharing fake news articles, very much so, including joking about April Fools. And our biggest story of the week, hands down, comes from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as well as government officials in Germany accusing President Trump of diverting life saving masks from their countries and bringing them back to the United States to address our shortage of masks. This story is so crazy because there are a million different ways to look at it. First of all, it's a very precarious situation to be stealing masks from another country during a pandemic, but it's only highlighted by the fact that if this story is later substantiated, then that means that we're stealing life-saving masks and things from our allies, which is just crazy. I don't think that there's another word to describe it. It's one of the situations where truth is definitely so much stranger than fiction. But boy, I tell you what, if there was a living personification of the word savage, it would be Donald Trump. The man is so shameless. He's like a murderer leading the search party for the victim. He's so shameless that he's the equivalent of someone standing at the candlelight visual for that victim with the receipt for the wood chipper in his pocket. Alrighty, so the next thing that we kind of want to talk about, since we didn't get to review it last week, is just the practicalities of social distancing and life under quarantine. So, we did talk about the up-to-date information of COVID-19, why social distancing is so important, and the disruptions it kind of made in our lives. But it came to the attention of myself and the Ebony Expats team that we really need to sit down and talk about what does social distancing look like, what impact does it have on mental health, and what can we do to kind of put ourselves back into the driver's seat of this pandemic. So first and foremost, we want to start off by acknowledging that we are collectively feeling an array of trauma and grief. Many of us have been laid off from our job, or our jobs are at risk. Many of our family members are essential workers and or healthcare providers, and we're just not sure when things are going to return back to normal. And you may just be heavily worried about a series of things, including if you're from a country where coronavirus has been most or has impacted the most, then you might even be worried about if our economies will recover from such an unexpected blow. Regardless of how this weight is carried, we want to acknowledge that it's heavy, and also that the first step to managing a problem, the first step to healing, is always acknowledging the problem's existence. So that's what we want to do. Even though people may be experiencing these emotions differently, it's definitely something on everybody's hearts and minds, and it's really important that we say it out loud so we can kind of talk about it. But if you think about it, one of the interesting things is that we are forced now to live our lives digitally, to connect through social media platforms. But this is the same place that where we're getting our news. Sometimes even feeling like we're bombarded by news. According to the Pew Research Center, 62% of Americans report getting their news from Facebook. On a global scale, social media is the chosen consumers platform for receiving news. So give yourself the permission to disconnect and focus on how you're feeling if need be. Um, I know that for myself, my timeline looks like a post from a family member, meme, death toll, right? And so if we're continuously getting these messages, it can cause stress and strain. So that is something that we also want to keep in mind. This problem is so rampant that the Center for Disease Control has even put dedicated entire page on their website to stress and coping, where they outline everything from lifestyle skills to um, to looking for signs of heightened stress in children. So this is something that everybody's experiencing. Make no mistake about it. Underscoring this problem is a challenge that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis, which is just stress management. Let us not forget the amount or the damage that stress can do to the body, how it puts strain on our most vital organs, and it actually prevents the body from fighting off antigens that help prevent us from getting sick. So stress is definitely enemy number one, and we want to figure out like how to manage it. So this is the opposite of a productivity push. We're not out here screaming at you that you should be working towards anything outside of your wellness. A productivity push, if you don't know, is for instance that meme that's going around that says if you don't come out of quarantine with a new hobby or a new skill or outlook on life, that you're somehow falling short or failing. And personally, I feel like that's the same as telling someone with a broken ankle that the key to life is jumping jacks, right? It's insensitive, it's unhelpful, and yeah, it makes you feel like fuck off, maybe I'm doing my best. That's not what we want to do. We want you to just be insightful and work towards building routines and things like that that'll support you. So when I say routine, I mean establishing something that you do every day at a certain time to give you a sense of normalcy. So routine for some people can just be like, I wake up every morning and I brush my teeth. That's all I can promise right now. I'm mentally strained, but this is what I do. Routine can be dedicating an hour to dance or yoga or cooking your favorite food or just sitting your ass down and watching Netflix. There's no shame and blame in any of those things, but there is something to be said by saying, I sleep here, I eat here, I exercise here, I do this at this time, I do this at this time, and I do this at this time. Now, I know some of you guys are rolling your eyes like, wow, Captain Obvious, that's your big advice routine. But I think you would be underestimating the simplicity in overcoming small challenges to give us a sense of power. Because that's one of the things that's facing everyone as well, is the loss of control over your life or the feeling of powerlessness. So just to give yourself a few wins every day, to give yourself a few goals that you can achieve at certain times can go wonders in giving us agency, a feeling of agency over our lives. There's still somewhat of a disruptive narrative that if you reach out for help, you're some way weak or vulnerable in negative sense of the word, and that's really toxic because human beings are social creatures, and we don't just require interdependence. We thrive on it, right? So don't be afraid during this time to ask for help. Reach out to close loved ones. Take some time for yourself, or see a medical professional, a mental health professional. Call a distress hotline if you're feeling those emotions intensely, but give yourself permission to reach out, because what we're dealing right now is a worldly collective problem that can't be dealt with on the individual level, and that's something that we really really wanted to get across. I personally have a therapist. I was seeing her before shit hit the fan, but she's been an exceptional part of me staying mentally alert, and also just adjusting and giving me personal insights in the midst of all of this chaos. Lastly, don't be afraid to say no to things. I know that personally, I'm a people pleaser, so I try to be as accommodating as I can. Whatever your background is, we all have friends, we all have family, we all have loved ones, but there's nothing wrong with saying I don't have the energy to give to you. I love you, but I'm not in the space to be or to do this particular thing right now, and that's 100% okay. Again, it's giving ourselves the power to have more say over our lives and to conserve our energy and do what's necessary to keep ourselves healthy. Okay. So on the point of talking about routine and things like that, Ebony Expats is organizing a series of events, including yoga nights with Tori J for free daily sessions that she's an expert and she'll help guide us through different yoga poses, helping us relax. But if you need a mental break, feel free to come and join us. I'll be there. I know the other Ebony expats will be there. But it's important to us that we facilitate an environment of connection and support, not only just information sharing. Okay, so remember, if you take nothing else away from this, is that you want to treat your body like royalty, you want to treat your mind like royalty, and hold yourself close, hold the ones that you love close, and don't be afraid to feel your emotions. Don't be afraid to disconnect and take care of yourself. So thank you so much for joining us for this broadcast of Ebony Expats News. We look forward to seeing you at this time next week. And we also are super curious about your experiences. So in the comments below, tell us where you are. Tell us what your experience has been in the country that you're currently in. And if you want to share more in depth, feel free to make your Instagram story with the hashtag Rona Stories. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.